Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AI Inside Podcast, the show where we take a look at the AI that is layered throughout so much of the world of technology. I am one of your hosts, Jason Howell, joined as always by Jeff Jarvis. How you doing, Jeff?
Hello, boss. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm cold. Like, isn't it summer? And yet it's like, it's so chilly here. The last week.
It's perfect here. It's perfect.
Is it?
It's 80 degrees.
Freezing my butt off. Oh, that's nice. That is perfect. A little warmer than that, and you don't want to spend a huge amount of time outside. Less than that.
I'm going back out to edit my manuscript on the deck as soon as we're done.
Perfect. I have to find ways to do that too. I go outside to do a lot of my writing because like this desk can be, it's great, but it's not all the time great.
What room are you in the house? Are you in the basement?
This is like a den. It's like a den off to the side of the kitchen. It's not great for like studio environment, but it works. Most people probably would never know that there's absolutely no door that separates the kitchen to
and the dog can come in.
Area. And the dog can come in. Exactly. Every once in a while you see the tail if you're watching the video version. Just want to throw a huge thank you to the people who support us each and every week on Patreon. That's patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Our patron of the week, Mike Reiser, who's actually our newest patron, came in a couple of days ago. So, Mike, good to have you here. Thank you for being here and for supporting what we do. And then, of course, go to aiinside.show. You get everything that you need there, how to subscribe, all of our show notes. Everything can be found there. With that out of the way, once again, we have a show filled with a few kind of consistent common themes throughout. Just seems to be the way the industry works these days. And we'll start with Apple, not WWDC. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
That's for all those other nerds.
Oh,
that's so yesterday.
No, so Apple published a research paper that really got a lot of people talking. I think part of the reason it got people talking is because Apple's Apple's story around AI right now is largely driven around the fact that they made a lot of promises about what they would do with AI. They couldn't quite get that to market or didn't feel comfortable bringing it to market at the state that it was. So they paused it, which is kind of, it's smart of Apple to do that, but them promising something and then postponing it is not very Apple-y. Usually they have their ducks in a row in this. And so a lot of people have criticized Apple for its kind of current moment and current place in artificial intelligence. And now they have their research team, I suppose, has done a research paper called The Illusion of Thinking, Understanding the Strength and Limitations of Reasoning Models via the Lens of Problem Complexity. And largely it challenges claims around advanced reasoning models. It says that they don't think, put that in quotes, as you have mentioned many times. There's not actual human thinking happening here. Instead, the report says that it creates illusions of reasoning. And they tested, OpenAI's O3, Claude 3.7, Google's Gemini. They used these controlled puzzle environments. And what they found is that they noted a, quote, complete accuracy collapse when faced with incredibly... Which is a great terminology.
What happened to your final in math, son? I had a complete accuracy collapse, Dad.
Don't blame me. It was my complete accuracy collapse. Prolapse. No. When faced with incredibly complex problems, and I think this was kind of the interesting aspect of this. It wasn't a matter of the fact that the capability wasn't there in the form of tokens. There was adequate compute to tackle it, but instead of kind of solving those problems, it folded, it collapsed, and it didn't use those tokens to tackle it. So that's kind of the setup for the paper itself. And I know we've got a bunch of links in here that we can talk about, but kind of what's your thoughts starting off?
Well, it makes me the first thought actually is that it's a funny thing about Apple. When they failed at the ad business, and they did, they turned that failure into a feature. Oh, we're the privacy company because we can't sell ads anyway, so we might as well not collect any data anyway, and we'll tell you we're private because we can't make a go of it in the ad business. And the cynical me says, well, they're not making a go of it in the AI business now, like the ad business, and they're saying, well, let's cut it down. Right. Yeah. Which is a little bit what Murdoch does too, what the Journal does in cutting down other models. That's the cynical side. I think it's a legitimate paper. I think it's well done as far as I can understand it. And I think it's important that we have this discussion. And so the fact that it then prompted the other things we're going to mention in a second is good. And the one that struck me most was Stephen Sinofsky talking about the problems of the illusion of thinking and thoughts. He said it's a fantastic paper. AI is not human. Anthropomorphization has been bad for AI, LLMs, and chat. And I think that's the larger point here, is that by ascribing thought to it, by ascribing meaning, by finding meaning, and this is part of what Emily Bender was saying when we had her on, was that we're imposing our meaning on it. And when we don't realize that, that's a problem. So it's not just the reasoning that collapses, it's our entire expectation of it that collapses. And that's bad for the AI business. What'd you think?
Interesting. Yeah. Sinofsky says, the big problem is not what LLMs do, but the incredible hubris that has characterized the
That's
AI
going to be the
segment
word
of
of the
computer
day
science.
here.
Yeah, there's a lot of hubris in today's
A lot
show.
of hubris today.
That's true. So I think that the paper, it sounds like, and again, there's only so much. I only have so much time. It's not like I pull up the paper and I read start to finish. So I read through, I understand what I can. I also read other people and watch other people to kind of get their perspectives, to kind of start to formulate my understanding of things. And I think that it makes some really valid points. I did come across a video yesterday on the Daily Tech News show I did with Tom Merritt, where he had, there was an emailer actually that sent in a video by, what is his name? Oh, and I actually have to remove this. Sorry, this is behind the scenes stuff, but in order for me to actually play this clip, this is Nate Jones, yes. But in order for me to actually play this for you, I have to do it differently in StreamYard. Okay, so I now have it pulled up so you'll actually be able to hear it. Where he looks at this paper, and his takeaway is kind of the opposite side, that it's interesting, but it's also flawed. And if I skip forward...
And I think this guy, I watch this guy regularly on TikTok. I think he's very good.
Yeah, and you know what? I haven't had him on my radar, but I will, because I thought this was an interesting... Yeah, that's a good idea. So here's a minute-long clip that I think summarizes kind of his perspective on this, and we can talk about that.
There are lots of ways to be graceful about this, but the key insight is that right now, LLMs don't have a super standard, understood, accepted framework for calling for help when they run into difficult situations. And if we want multi-agent systems to succeed, we need to have trigger points that we all understand how to implement, a defined framework, if you will, for trigger points, so that we understand when an LLM hits a certain complexity threshold, and it is very unlikely to succeed given the parameters of that model, given the testing done on that model, given the latency requirements, given the lack of tools, given the lack of inference time, then we go and ask for help. And right now, I feel like a lot of that is being done on sort of a best effort basis by teams designing systems. And I would love it if we as a community came together to actually work on some systems thinking around when it makes sense to have a lifeline, to
have a lifeline. So what he's talking about is that the inherent issues that he sees, the holes that he pokes into the report, is that the systems that they were using weren't given enough access to the tools that they would need to do this. It's one thing to have the right amount of tokens, but when they don't have, tools, they don't have internet access, they don't have extended thinking, in air quotes, time, then you're crippling the model from being able to do the thing you're saying it's not capable of doing. And I think his bigger conclusion here is that these models need, like he said, a framework for calling for help. If the model can recognize, hey, I've reached the limit of what I'm capable of doing, instead of folding, or whatever we called it earlier, instead of collapsing, recognizing, oh, there's this other direction, this call for help kind of extension framework that I can now go outside of my ability to handle 98% of the query and find help on the remaining 2% edge case of the query. I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting, but it raises for me two questions. First is that LLMs, but when you think about it, all technologies are built to please us. That's
Yes.
why we build them, right?
Sure.
And you're not going to build a car that won't take you where you want to go. You're going to build it so it takes you where you want to go. You build an LLM, and it is built to give you what you want. Point one. Now, point two is it doesn't know when it fails because it doesn't, I'll say for the thousandth time,
Right.
It has
Totally.
no sense of meaning. So how can it know success or failure and know when to call for that help? It's
Great
not
point.
built to disappoint us with failure. And until it can fail, and we've talked about this, I think a few months ago, and I forget who it was who wrote about this, until it knows how to fail, it can't succeed.
Why are more companies not working on that? Because it's so true.
I think it's
so true. And
fundamental to the whole model that there's because it has no sense of meaning,
yeah.
it can't know what success is. And I know somebody's going to come after me and say, I'm being simplistic, I know.
Right.
But at a real level, it doesn't. It has no. It's not goal oriented. That's why also the whole talk about alignment and guardrails is foolish in my view, because it doesn't have that sense of itself. It has no sense of itself. It has no sense of meaning and substance. And so when you're trying to expect meaning and the substance of it, you'll be disappointed. Number one, but number two, it can't tell you when it fails to give you what you want. So it will always try to give you what it thinks you want. Though it doesn't think. It'll
It
try
never knows
to create
it's at
an
the end
answer.
of its road.
No. I don't
It
know how
always sees
would.
a horizon. It always sees a horizon at the end of that road.
Right. I mean, look at the cases where
Yeah.
you ask for 5 words starting with C and it gives you 3 with C and 1 with D and 1 with E, right?
Yeah.
Because it can't even figure that out. Now, you can program that in, but you got to be pretty explicit how you program that in to figure that
Yes.
out. And in its world of tokens, I think we have to abstract our thinking back. And God knows I'm not an expert on this. This is why I'm on this show, so I can learn. But when you realize that everything is an abstraction, it's just a token. It's just a number for a bunch of characters or what we would call words and their coincidental use. That's all it is. And when you think of it that way and say, and it's still remarkable. You showed me something earlier you were working on, and it's quite amazing. And because of the sheer horsepower that put behind it, yes, it does amazing things, and we should be grateful for that and use that wisely. But the anthropomorphization, that's why it all ties in together. The anthropomorphization is also thinking that it's capable of being right or wrong, winning or losing,
Human thought.
all of that.
That it's capable of being like a human brain, which we will definitely
get to
talk
later.
about
Yes.
in a moment. I know you put another link in here to another Sam Altman manifesto that kind of ties into this, but I think ties into this from a different direction for sure. Tell me a little bit about this.
So Sam Altman, who's known to put forward these kind of, I believe, rather sophomoric little essays about the state of the world, put one up called The Gentle Singularity. And it kind of drove me nuts. But I think that it fits in with what we've just talked about in terms of the anthropomorphization and the expectation. And it goes right to AGI, right? He said, I'll just a few things. Humanity is close to building digital superintelligence. No, I question your premise there, Sam, and I question thus your whole business model and your whole company, because again, you put that expectation on it. You could make ChatGPT to do phenomenal, amazing, wondrous, entertaining, cool things.
Yeah.
But to put that as the basis of what you're doing, I think just builds nothing but a house of cards, a $1 trillion house of cards.
Yeah.
He says that we have recently built systems that are smarter than people in many ways. The fallacy there is they're not smart. They are capable of performing functions faster and easier, more efficiently than we do. Yes, like a calculator can. A calculator, in that sense, when it comes to adding, is a hell of a lot smarter than I am. And so in that definition, but he's using a different definition of smart as if it's intelligent. He talks about
There's
it
those
amplifying
words
the
again, yeah.
output of people using them. And that just struck me as so mechanistic. Going down to the next page, in some senses, ChatGPT is already more powerful than any human who has ever lived. Oh my God. The hubris, the ego of that. It's just beyond the pale to me that he thinks that that's where they are. And they aren't even at AGI. But they're already, their tool is more powerful than any human who has ever lived. Jesus. He says we've already arrived at cognitive agents. I don't think we're there. He says experts will probably be much better than novices at doing things. Thank you, Sam. He says that we do not know how far beyond human level intelligence we can go, but we're about to find out. I don't think we are.
He define about.
Yeah. He talks a lot about abundance. He says that with abundant intelligence and energy, he says that intelligence, the cost of intelligence will lower to the cost of electricity. Well, define intelligence. It's like defining thought. It's saying that the thing is thinking. I think it's all a ruse. And then he says that it'll be significant at making AI itself faster. So that's his business model, is we're going to use the machine to make the machine to make machines that make machines. He called it the cost. Yeah, I already said that. Sorry. I'm going through my own notes here.
I love it. I love the annotated PDF. If you're watching the video version, Jeff sent me the entire thing with his red pen chicken scratch on the side. It's great.
For me, that's neat handwriting, man. That's really neat. He says the world we're getting so much richer so quickly, but no, the world is not getting richer. The world is getting more inequitable.
More divided, inequitable. Right.
Expectations will go up, but capabilities will go up equally quickly, and we'll all get better stuff. We will build ever more wonderful things for each other, lollipops and rainbows and kittens for all of us.
Yeah.
And then he uses words that you can just tell. I don't know if he dropped out of college or not, but from a relativistic perspective, the singularity happens bit by bit, and the merge happens slowly. The presumption that built into that is amazing. He insists here that we can robustly guarantee that we get AI systems to learn and act towards what we collectively really want over the long term. That's a flat out lie. He cannot guarantee that. See the prior discussion.
No, right? You're right. You're right.
If it collapses at a puzzle, it will collapse at the challenges of life. He gives a little zap to Zuckerberg saying basically that this will all be so much better than social media, which is talking about it's not just Zuck, it's us. The focus on making superintelligence cheap, widely available, and not too concentrated with any person, company, or country. Well, we'll see about that. And then finally, there's this. We, the whole industry, not just OpenAI, are building a brain for the world. Oh, screw me. It's just so obnoxious. So if you go to Sam Altman, his blog, and read this, you can well disagree with me, but it's just the attitude that is inherent in this is every danger that the Apple paper talks about. So thank you for that little.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me as you kind of walk through that is it's kind of a greatest hits of hooray for AI, you know?
Yeah.
It's like all the things that you've heard in a single paper.
Yep.
Or in a single, manifesto, or it's not a manifesto. I don't know what you call it.
I think a manifesto would be stronger than it is.
Yeah.
It's
a blog post,
a sophomore essay. And after the break, we'll hear one more like it.
Oh boy, yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about this. Ilya Sutskever, he's in the news, and we're going to go even deeper into the world of superintelligence in a few moments, so hang tight. All right, Superintelligence Part 2 and then Part 3 after this. Ilya Sutskever, who is the co-founder and former chief scientist at OpenAI, received a University of Toronto honorary degree, doctorate degree, and gave a speech last week during the ceremony He shared his thoughts on the potential of AI for a large part of it, as you could imagine that he would be want to do, being who he is and his legacy and where we are in the world of AI. Sorry, I'm getting an ad in my ear and it's distracting. Basically sharing what we are heading toward, which is a time where technology can do everything a human can do, which sounds also very familiar.
Very much so.
So yes, you have a little clip here. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and pull that up and we'll play a little bit of this from his speech at the ceremony. Here we go.
Slowly but surely, or maybe not so slowly, AI will keep getting better. And the day will come when AI will do all the things that we can do. Not just some of them, but all of them. Anything which I can learn, anything which any one of you can learn, the AI could do as well. How do we know this, by the way? How can I be so sure? How can I be so sure of that?
Good question, Ilya.
The reason is that all of us have a brain, and the brain is a biological computer. That's why. We have a brain, the brain is a biological computer. So why can't a digital computer, a digital brain, do the same things?
Because they're not the same thing.
Bingo! Bingo!
To assume that they both can do the same things because they are both different types of computers does not. Yeah, they're
Exactly.
not the same thing. A brain is a different type of computer than a computer that we created. But yeah, but I understand where he's coming from. Like the way that they're designing these systems is largely modeled after an understanding of how the human brain works, not exactly how the brain works, but an understanding, an interpretation of how it works. And it's getting them to a certain point. But to then basically say they are the same thing, I think is a big, big fallacy.
I couldn't agree more. And that's exactly what I was thinking as I watched this. And it is an ultimate form of anthropomorphization.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten through that word 3 times without much of it.
I know. Good job.
It's pretty amazing. Because it's imposing, it's godlike that the computer is created in his image. And if I have a brain, I've made a brain, and that means it can do all I can do and more. That makes me a more powerful brain. But if we go back in history, as I want to do, when the telegraph began, the metaphor was made to the human nervous system, and that it was one big nervous system.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't
Right.
know that. That's
and
so interesting.
don't we remember when the internet came along, we thought that our brain was a network.
That's
Right.
true.
And it was, and the internet is like us, and we're all going to be this hive mind network. And so now he comes along and he creates neural networks, which is by the name and presumption itself is telling. He says, well, it's a brain, ergo, anything we can do, it can do better. And that's just wrong. And it's proven wrong every day. See the prior discussion. And what upsets me so much about this is not that I'm against AI. I'm amazed by AI. I think AI can do phenomenal things. I love playing with it. I hate how they oversell it.
Yeah.
And it's hype. That's what Emily Bender would say, but it's more than hype. It's falsehood. It's hubris. It's a prediction of their own power that's not going to come true. And I hate to see how they're going to deflate. I probably won't be. It'll take a long, long time for them to deflate. But they're ruining their own tools. They're ruining the only amazing things they're making. So, what'd you think of it otherwise? Anything else?
Well, so fascinating. I'm happy I watched it and it's interesting because, again, I find myself often torn on these things because I get where they're coming from. And I do agree that these tools are amazing. As you said, like I use them very regularly and I'm often pretty impressed by what I'm able to get them to do. But there is that hubris quality, that hubris element that, I don't know, may turn out to be accurate to some degree, to some definition, but I think they jump a little too quickly to it's the most amazing thing and it's going to, do this and that. And especially as we've seen in a couple of these stories, make absolute guarantees and assurances when you don't have a window into the future. You have an idea of where things could go, a lot of things could happen in between now and then to prevent that from happening. And so who knows? I think another thing that I noticed was when he's talking, meanwhile, this is a speech that he's delivering to fellow graduates. And at one point he says, whether you like it or not, your life is going to be infected by AI to a great extent. These, what did he say? Something to the tune of like, these AI will be able to do everything that you can learn how to do. And it felt, given the environment.
Well, I just wasted 4 years of my life.
It was like, yay, I've accomplished so much. I got here. And then he's like, yeah, everything you just did, AI is going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
If it isn't able to already, it's going to do exactly what you just did, which I wonder what that left them with. Did that leave them with inspiration and hope? Or did that leave them wondering like, oh, what the hell am I going to do then? It was kind of an interesting delivery mechanism.
At least the tuition at University of Toronto is less than it is here.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, right. So, but yeah, very, very good. And then there is more on the superintelligence beat. I'm sure superintelligence will make the title in some way, shape, or form today because it's just
Huburistic
half of the show.
Superintelligence, yes.
Huburistic superintelligence. I like it. Meta is also making superintelligence news, launching a new AI research lab that is focused on achieving that pinnacle watermark of superintelligence. Mark Zuckerberg personally leading the recruitment of around 50 people to sit next to him, and I'm not just saying that, according to sources, new division placed closely to where he sits in the organization. It's just massive reorganization in the company around this drive towards superintelligence. And which the first thing this has me wondering is like, oh, where's Jan LaCun in all this? Because he's also going to have to share space with Meta's investment of $14 billion into Scale AI. This is according to Bloomberg. Scale AI CEO Alexander Wang would join Meta in the process, and I don't know if it's lead this team or be, but most certainly be critically, a critical component of the development of this team, along with Mark Zuckerberg. So interesting stuff. Scale AI helps companies like OpenAI, Microsoft, Meta, Google to prepare their training data for their frontier models. And, this is very similar to what we've seen other companies like Google, like Microsoft do, in that they've got insane buckets of money. They all see AI as the next major foundational shift in technology, and we better be there. Not only better we be there, we better lead it. And the best way to lead it is to use our buckets of money to buy leaders in the space and buy our way to the top. And this seems like another one of those.
So Dr. LaCun says in the New York Times report on this that what he said on our show, and you can go back and look at our past episodes and find it. It's a fascinating interview. That you're not going to reach these new pinnacles unless there are new ideas. And I think we've heard that a few times lately, that the present structure isn't going to get us there. Now, again, is the there that they're imagining even ever possible? Is a different question. But I think what LaCun is saying is we kind of reached the end of what current ideas can do. That goes back to the Apple paper, I think, is we pushed it and it collapsed. And so we need some structure to rethink how far this will go. And even Sundar Pichai is speaking similarly. There was a story this week that says that AGI is impossible with today's tech. So you've got Sam out there saying, we're almost there, around the corner, just wait a week or so. And then you've got Jan LaCun saying, no, we need new ideas, we need new stuff. And you even have Sundar saying, not with the current technology, we're not there. So I think that I trust the voices of sobriety in this discussion.
Yes. I wonder how long it takes before they switch their thinking and and start to look through rose-colored glasses. Like I'm happy that Sundar Pichai has a more sobered outlook on this. And I wonder at what point does it behoove him and the business model to start thinking in the way that his competitors are, because they're all using that as the impetus to build these massive new kind of efforts.
Right. And he has DeepMind in the company, which is part of the AGI world.
Yeah,
and you know,
totally.
The point you make, Jason, too, is when do they start backing up because they're not meeting the goals that they promised? And back to Altman's essay, is that he was almost saying, well, the singularity comes bit by bit, like kind of like you're in there more than you already know.
Yeah.
We're there more than you know. If you thought back a few years, well, you'd just be amazed where we are now. So we're really farther along than you can even know because you're already buried in it. No.
Yeah, and I think the bigger question, you know, that we ask all the time, definitely on this show, is what exactly is what they're talking about? If Zuckerberg is building a new team, a new department, which, by the way, just totally reminds me of the shift to Meta, right? Because the metaverse was the big deal, and now
what's the new?
Are we going to get a new
name?
name change? You know, the super, is that going to be the new name of the company? I don't know, but you know, what exactly is superintelligence? Like we have an idea. There's a definition and everything. What is AGI? What is superintelligence, and how will we know that we're there when we get there? And that goalpost continues to, I mean, I feel like there have been moments in the past year where these same people have said, oh, we're already at AGI. And then later they're like, well, in order to get to AGI, it's like, I can't even keep it all straight anymore, because even they don't know what these terms actually mean from like an exact, like I can point at that and I know what it is when I see it perspective, you know?
And the risk is a next artificial intelligence winter, where both users and especially investors say, I don't think this is paying off.
Yeah.
I don't see where these huge advances are. I don't see where the business model is. I don't see where the value creation is. I don't see where the efficiency in society is. We really need, so for my book, Hot Type, out as soon as I finish it,
Love the name.
I'm doing, it is a good name. I'm doing a lot of research on the economic impact of the linotype and the mechanization and industrialization of print. And in 1900, there was a special congressional commission and a special Bureau of Labor report around that time, and the census all did huge studies of the impact of these technologies on employment and the economy. And the current government is not likely to spend money on any such thing, but we need study, because we're making presumptions also about what's happening in the job market. What's the value of this? What's the efficiency that it's causing? What disruption is it causing? We really don't have good data at all on any of that. You know, you have Duolingo saying, we're all AI, and then 2 weeks later, oh, actually, no, we're not.
Yeah. So that might be rounding out our superintelligence block.
Now we're back to normal dumb now.
Yeah, now we're back down to earth with more tangible things that we can point to and be like, this exists right now, not somewhere down the line. Apple, as we mentioned earlier, did have their worldwide developer conference. It might even still be happening. I think it's happening today, the actual conference, but they had their kind of keynote event, which is a pre-recorded, announcement of all new things Apple. And I think a lot of people were looking forward to that, to see like, how does Apple approach the AI topic, considering their challenges that they've had in the last 6 months to a year with AI and bringing their ideas to market and everything. Are they going to face it? Are they going to pretend like it didn't happen? Whatever. And there really wasn't an insane amount of direct talk about AI. There were certainly features that use AI, some features that the Pixels had, like call screening, using on-device AI to kind of make these determinations about like what's a spam call, or they have their own version of Circle to Search now, which uses AI tapped into visual intelligence and that sort of stuff. Totally. Well, yeah. And I actually did a video on that on my channel that's all about like, these things seem really familiar, just saying. Yeah. But what they led the show with acted as kind of the acknowledgement of their kind of issues, let's say, around AI without them acknowledging that aspect of it, right? They started with the announcement of Foundation Models Framework, which basically it enables apps on iOS devices to integrate AI capabilities on device, all without charge, without cloud costs, that sort of stuff. Also very privacy focused, which Apple has wanted to do. It's certainly something, like you said earlier, that they have kind of leveraged as their company strength for these products. And so no cloud API. So basically developers can integrate into the on-device AI with their apps, kind of plug into it because it's baked into the operating system specifically. It's not an extra thing. It's just baked there, ready for developers to tap into it and start integrating that AI that's on the device and cheap as in free, into their apps. And so it'll be interesting to see how this motivates, I guess, iOS developers to play around more with AI because they have a lot of incentive to do it, and it really feeds into Apple's ecosystem approach. It's a very ecosystem driven company. And so this makes a lot of sense to me.
It goes back to the discussion in the early days of the phones when you and I, as Android people, were frustrated that every damn new app that came out for the iPhone. Because why bother doing Android, man?
Yeah, why not us?
Yeah. And so if you were an AI developer, and I'm not sure what that is, it may be basically be a prompt writer in a sense, right? What does it really mean to be an AI developer now if you're developing stuff out of the AI? But if you were, I think there's an application layer. Who would you build on?
Who would I build on if I had to choose like one?
Right. You're gonna devote some effort. You got an idea. You're gonna devote some effort. You're gonna use one of these platforms and models to do that. You have a choice of Apple, Meta, Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Anthropic. And whatchamacallit, the French one, Mistral.
Yeah.
So the factors.
That's a really hard question to answer. Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer because I think there's a lot of factors there. Each model, it has its capabilities and also its ethical kind of its marketplace perception and everything. So that's all stuff.
Then there's a distribution question and
distribution. There's cost. Cost is big. I mean, and that's kind of part of why this is kind of appealing, I think, for developers is. If developers choose to tap into the AI that's baked into the operating system, the iOS operating system, then they are trusting in what Apple has already pre-vetted, right? And they are saving costs. They don't have to pay anything for it because it's already right there. It might not be the most powerful, and I think that's what's going to be really interesting to see is, it may not do all the things, might not have all the bells and whistles of all these other, but it might do them well enough for the application that the developer is creating and wants to, that challenge that they want to tackle. And so it might be a worthy trade-off, not as powerful, but dirt cheap as in free and vetted by Apple. So I trust it, speaking as the developer. And probably lower effort versus having to spin up your own kind of API call web of complexity in order to tap into the other things. Yeah. Or maybe it's all of the above. Maybe that's like the baseline layer. And then they also go out to the other things. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I think it's smart of Apple to do that. And they often have created unique and interesting, let's say compelling ways to get developers active on their efforts. Android often fails at that. Android will create these things and be like, and we want all of our developers to get on the boat with us. And for whatever reason, they can't get that maximum impact. It's like Android has Material 3 Expressive coming out soon. This is a complete, a pretty major redesign of the operating system from a UI perspective and a design perspective. And so all of Google's apps are going to look a new way. Are all the developers of all the other apps going to do the work and the time to match it so that everything looks cohesive and on a similar plane? I would guess no. I think Google has a really hard time convincing developers to do that extra work. Apple has a much better time at it.
Yeah, so I would have thought in that capability, cost, ethics, distribution structure that you raised, I would have thought that distribution might have been king, but no, because if distribution were king, Android would have killed Apple long
Right.
ago in terms of developer interest, but it hasn't.
Just pure reach. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more complicated than that, I guess. Couple of things related to NotebookLM, which we love to talk about just because it's a cool dang product. Now has a public sharing feature. So if you have created a notebook and you want to share it with someone, that is apparently
This is
now
big.
available.
This is big.
Tell me why it's big, Jeff. I'm curious to hear your take on this.
Just because because it's a notebook, you can put all your stuff into it. I mean, just that alone, it's a shared folder, right? And then on top of that, you're creating the opportunity for people to query whatever you have in there. Maybe it's transcripts of all of our show interviews. I think that's an idea. And then I interviewed somebody for the book on Sunday for an hour and a half, and I put the transcript in and I sent it to him so that it's a resource for him too to go into. And so I can see using this not so much to create, but to enable collaborative questioning. I can see this being used journalistically like crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right, where here's all the school board meetings in New Jersey, and what questions do you want to ask, and what do you find out from it?
Right. What understanding are you lacking about this entire big data set? Ask it the question that you're confused on.
Or
and
what can
get
you
the answer.
discover in it that
Yeah.
a lone reporter couldn't discover, and that the receipts are there for? So I think that this opens up a level of collaboration around original source material. That's really exciting.
Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, NotebookLM not alone in doing this. I even shared with you a Perplexity,
Yes.
thing earlier this morning that that was a functionality that Perplexity baked in. So this is becoming more and more common in that when you've got, some sort of query inside of these models, you can share it publicly or make it accessible like in search and stuff. I think you can do that in Perplexity. I don't think is that yet, but yeah, very nice. And then you also put in an article that made my ears perk up a little bit that was about pairing NotebookLM with Perplexity.
Yeah, I figured you'd have a better sense of what this looks like than I could.
Well, so this is written by Manur Faisal. I hope I got your name right. Sorry about that. He combined NotebookLM with Perplexity to create what he calls like a good research workflow, because in the way that he is using it, Perplexity really shines as a real-time web search engine.
It's sources,
real-time
isn't it? Yeah.
source discovery,
finds sources,
right?
yep.
I've got this idea that I'm working on. I want to, come up with a lot of different sources that I can reference and refer to and understand why I'm going to them. That can take a lot of time without a tool. With a tool like Perplexity, it's really quite easy, and I use it for that a lot. NotebookLM organizes and analyzes information that's already been gathered. So it's not going to go out and find all these things. You have to feed it information. It can also find sources for certain things, I believe, if you want it to do that.
I didn't realize this. It added a discover sources feature to NotebookLM.
That's what it is. Yeah, and I haven't
which
used
allows
it
you to
for that.
describe the kinds of sources you'd like to add to your notebook and then search the web, but it has limitations. It can only curate a maximum of 10 recommended sources at a time, which
There you
Perplexity
go.
is not limited by.
Yeah, right. And so if you use Perplexity to come up with your sources and your information, throw that into NotebookLM and analyze that information that you've already gathered, then you can do deeper analysis around research based on it, really focused on that data set. And yeah, so I think it sounds really cool. What that had me thinking is it has me yearning for a way to do this automatically because I do bounce between services sometimes, and sometimes like my quickest hack is to just open up a notepad document and, all of my sources, I just, copy text, paste it all into the notepad, this like long, endless never-ending notepad document with all of my sources, and then I save that to a file, and then I throw that into the thing to have that be my whole context window. And it's just kind of a pain in the butt to have to do that. Maybe
You'd think
something
that
like
Google
Mind
would've done this
Studio does
before.
that.
I'm sorry. You'd think that Google would have done this before Perplexity, given Google is a search engine.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But there's one good headline, subheading here. NotebookLM helps organize and engage the sources Perplexity finds. It organizes the chaos Perplexity finds,
Okay.
which is interesting. So search engines just find, oh my God, all this stuff,
Here they are, everything.
and then you bring order to it with NotebookLM. And I think it's a neat coming together. It was nice to
Yeah.
see that kind of usage.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like I said real quick there, it reminded me kind of like Mind Studio, maybe. Maybe this is the sort of task that a company like Mind Studio or a service like Mind Studio is designed to do, because that's really like meant to be like a connector between different things.
Also an interview we did before, so you can look that up.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was a ways ago at this point, but still very, very interesting. That comes up in my thoughts around these kinds of process stories quite a lot. And then also related to NotebookLM is a new AI startup called Hughes. Hughes, I think, is what you call it. 3 key members of NotebookLM lead the team at Hughes to create basically a platform for AI audio delivery of personal information. So let's see here.
What Siri should have been.
Is it? Yeah, I wonder how we define what this app is. Maybe that's the way to put it, because it is definitely like a voice assistant sort of thing. Let me see if I can share this, because it's largely driven. Oh, and I don't know. You know what? I don't know if I'm going to be able to share it because it's an app and it's not in a browser. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but I can at least show it. Let's see here. Yeah, and it's pretty simple. Like it is a closed beta right now. It's a closed invite only thing. But if you go to their Twitter account, which I think is Get Hughes, every day they put out a new code that has a certain amount of like takes on it, and then eventually it drains out and you have to wait until the next day. And so I was able to get that. And basically what I did is I connected my Gmail and I connected my Google Drive account to it. And what it gives you then is kind of a daily briefing that ties into your calendar, ties into your Gmail, and can give you a sense of like, here are things that you probably want to pay attention to. Also at the top of your inbox, this person sent you an email and they're still waiting on these 2 items. I'd prioritize that first. And then, it kind of gives you a little indication as far as like where you can put your attention on the day. I think meant to be kind of like you start your day with this and get some insight around it. And I can't say that I've relied on it yet. I've used it a couple of times, and it's kind of neat. I think it'll develop over time. It's a little buggy, but something interesting coming from the folks who did NotebookLM. So, they really know they're turned this into audio podcast generated by AI thing.
I got introduced to this team at Google before NotebookLM was released, and they're a very impressive bunch. And I feared that with their departure, NotebookLM would kind of suffer,
I don't think that
it's
you
been
can
doing
hear any of this, but it's reading me kind of my calendar, and I can have it expand on that by telling me more, or I can, eventually it kind of gets into some topics of the day, like news stories and stuff, and you can skip and move on to the next thing if you don't care about it. Sometimes it'll populate images that it pulls up related to different things, but sometimes they're not at all related. So it's kind of funny. It's like, why am I looking at this picture of this person when it's about that person? Anyways, it's a beta. It's worth checking out. It's Apple and iOS only for now. And I'm sure, speaking exactly to what you were talking about earlier, those companies just love to do that. But maybe it'll come to at some point in the future.
Years ago, I talked to Marissa Meyer when she was still at Google about hyperlocal, and she said, "No, Jeff, you're wrong. What's going to matter is hyperpersonal." And I think that when we give these companies the freedom to see all of our email and see what we're looking at and see all that stuff, that's the opportunity, is to say, you should know about this. And if it does a good job of it, the audio is secondary, to my mind. It's the gimmick that brought attention to NotebookLM. It's the question does it do a good job of analyzing my day and my interests?
Yeah, right. Well, and we see that with summaries too. Gemini is now doing this thing in my emails where it will take a thread and it will right up at the very top do the kind of like AI overview of the email thread. And sometimes it's like, well, yeah, but you missed a really critical thing.
Yeah.
And like, why would that not make it in there? And sometimes like it's the short email and the summary is like twice as long as the short email. It's like, why would I, so they don't even get that right. And so a thing like this, if you're relying on it anyways, you got to get it right. I don't want to miss that detail and then lose a deal or whatever the case may be because I relied on it giving me the right kind of summary.
Yeah, they can't understand the context of a lot of actions. When I interviewed this guy on Sunday, a phenomenal guy named Jonathan Siebold, who basically was the person who put together desktop publishing. He linked all the people. It's a phenomenal story, which I tell in hot type. And so I had the interview and I sent it to him. And because I did the Zoom summary, recorded it, and it's funny because it always presumes it's in a business context. So it starts with to-dos. Jeff is going to do this. Well, all Jeff said was, I'm going to think about that. Jeff is going to think about this.
Jeff is going to think about this.
Yeah. Jonathan is going to look into this. And because it's in a business context, and that's what it thinks is really important. But if you have an entirely different context, it can't grok that.
Right.
Because it can't understand anything. But
interesting. All right, we're going to take a break, and then when we get back, a few creativity and AI stories to round things out. Some of my favorite topics. That's coming up here in a few moments. All right, I think this is like AI and Hollywood, a few stories tied into that. Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis and filmmaker Darren Aronofsky in this first story. They've partnered on a project called Primordial Soup, which is creating a live-action AI-generated short hybrid called Ancestra. So they're working together to kind of explore the creative potential of AI in filmmaking. Of course, they're not alone. They're not the only ones doing this. But the short premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. And let's see here. I'm going to have to do, God, this today's show requires me doing so much StreamYard management. I wish this was easier, but
why can't AI do it for you?
And actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I probably shouldn't play it with sound because it might get a takedown. So I'm just going to show it very briefly because really what we're talking about is the fact that this, it's the visual anyways. And God, I feel like I've seen this. No, that's wrong. Okay, I'm probably gonna have to edit this because I'm messing this up.
Or you can show people what happens behind the scenes.
That's okay. There we go. Okay, so some of the visuals, anyways, and we've burned through the end. Okay, now we are at the beginning. DeepMind, Primordial Soup. A lot of what we see here, of which really this trailer does not have a whole lot to it, right? It's a baby in the womb. We've got some live action, and then everything that we're seeing here is just a mishmash of generative AI stuff, which I don't know. We've seen so much of that stuff. It's kind of like
it's bad abstract art.
Okay, it's AI generated animations. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of seemed a little too on the nose for me when I watched it, and it's very, very quick. It's a very short trailer for a short. But nonetheless, premiering in a couple of days. Apparently, we'll be able to see it at some point, and I will be curious to see it just from the perspective of Hollywood playing with these tools. It's obvious that they're playing with these tools, and what do we get out of it as viewers of this type of art? Do we actually get a better film out of it?
I don't think so. I think what we said last week on the show is that it's going to start with advertising. Since last week's show, the head of WPP, which is a gigantic agency, is leaving, stepping down, because there's panic in ad agencies because of AI, especially on the creative side. And so I think we are going to see commercials that come out. I saw there's this one commercial. I don't know if you see it. Trivago drives me nuts. They hired this guy a couple of years ago who was just creepy to me. And they had this guy on. Do you watch enough TV to see it, Jason, or you don't?
No.
Yeah, I see you're of a different generation. I
too
still have the
busy.
TV on. I still have my phone with a cord because I'm
Just
old.
always. Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
this Trivago commercial, and there's this guy with creepy teeth on it. Drove me nuts. And I didn't know it was Jurgen Klopp, the I guess former Liverpool football coach.
Okay.
And it's kind of wacky because his little German accent about I found Trivago and you didn't. Where the hell am I going with this? You may wonder. Well, because I saw a story online that they made a big deal. They're going to use AI to localize this around the world.
Oh, okay.
And I tried to find any evidence of this to bring on the show, and I didn't. But advertising is falling over its head trying to figure out how to use AI before movies are going to, before TV shows are going to. That's where
Yeah.
and you know what? That's precedent. That is precedented rather than unprecedented. Back into my history shtick, magazines and newspapers were nothing but dull rivers of type. And what broke that apart was the advertisers. They insisted on trying to get bigger type. They insisted on different typefaces. They insisted on white space. They insisted on illustration. They were the ones who changed the aesthetic of American media. And the editors followed. The designers followed. So on a good side, maybe we're going to see really creative people in the ad agencies business, and there are some really creative people there, will use these tools to the maximum because they only have to do it for 30 seconds.
Yeah, right.
They can demonstrate amazing things, and they don't have to worry about truth. It's a pitch.
Yeah,
It's
so
snake
true.
oil, right? So I think we could see tremendous creativity there, or we're going to see it all on TikTok.
Right.
I don't know which.
And YouTube and using flow.
I kind of don't want it
Google's
on
flow
TikTok.
tool.
I don't care if an ad is fake, but I want people on TikTok to be real, as real as
Yeah.
they are.
I think we're going to see all of the above.
Yeah, I think so.
it's all of the above. Luca Guadagnino's?
I think that's close.
Okay, close enough. Is doing a film about, it's a dramatization of Sam Altman's firing and rehiring at OpenAI in 2023 called Artificial. And it's been fast-tracked for Amazon MGM Studios, which I don't really have a whole lot to say about this other than I always find it interesting.
Oh, we can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, of course, going to watch it. And I find it interesting when films like this come out so soon after the event that they're showing, that they're dramatizing and everything. It was like that with the social network, if you remember. However, more than a decade ago,
Which I
at
thought
this
was
point,
a crappy
I think.
movie, but yes.
Yeah, I didn't really care very much for the movie either. But part of the reason was because, and even at the time, we're too close to this moment. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it immediately feels out of touch or out of date when it comes out because the real story is still developing. This might be about a particular moment. And so maybe it's more successful because it's about 4 days that happened a couple of years ago. But it still feels like we need time to like really understand the impact of those 4 days. What has that?
Yeah,
led
it's the
to
meaning
over the
of
last
it.
5
Right.
years? Yeah.
Right. Do you have HBO?
So I sometimes bop in and out of it.
Did you
Don't
watch
have it right now.
Did you watch Mountainhead?
Oh, wait a minute. No. Yes. Did watch Mountainhead, and wow.
Yeah, isn't it?
I'm happy you brought that up. That's right. I forgot that we watched that. Yeah, that was a. There were some really uncomfortable moments.
There really were. If you all haven't watched it, I think it's worth watching. Jesse Armstrong, who did Succession,
Yes.
and it's 4 AI boys basically causing Armageddon and not
in a
caring.
mountain bunker,
Yeah.
a mountain house.
And a lot of Tescriel like talk.
Totally. There was a lot of stuff, like a lot of the Tescriel themes
Made me
kind of
happy.
came
They
up.
didn't actually say Tescriel, but they said
No.
long-termism and all that.
Yeah. Transhumanism, that was a
transhumanism, right.
running theme, and the casual quality of it too. It's like, as if this is just how everybody thinks, and it was very fascinating.
And the technological testosterone of it. So I think this film about Altman depends on how it's done. If it's bad, it's going to be like Social Network. If it's good, it's going to be like Mountainhead, and exposing the absurdity of these people and how they think.
Yeah. I did think with Mountainhead, I don't think any of this is real true spoilers because there's not a whole lot of spoilers. It's just kind of like a weekend, you know. It's like a guy's weekend, but the guys just happen to be technology leaders who are, you know, warping the world with their hubris. But just the scene that they portray is that generative AI has become so fast and so good that it's absolutely impossible to understand what truth is online anymore. And as a result, the world is going to hell.
So the New York Times had a feature this week about just that there was a like reality apocalypse upon us. This has been the case since the camera. This has been the case since print. This has been the case forever. We don't have an agreed upon definition of reality. And so AI is another tool. It's going to make more stuff. But one of the most famous portraits of Abraham Lincoln, his head was put on the body of a horrible legislator who was in favor of slavery. Because it made a better picture. You know?
Because it made a better picture. Because it was framed better. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I didn't know that. And then finally, there's an interesting article, a Vulture article that shines a light on Hollywood's growing use of AI tools. Not a whole lot to say about this other than to say that the article really talks about how workers at every level of Hollywood are experimenting with AI and then publicly refusing to admit it. And I think that's analogous. I would guess that's pretty analogous to a lot of industries right now.
I think so too. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One is their own ego. Two, they don't want to get smashed by the unions for using it. And three is worried they're going to get sued. If somebody gets a successful suit against one of these tools and they use that tool to make whatever they made, it's like, oh God,
House of Cards right there. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, interesting kind of glimpse into what I think a lot of people have been feeling and are feeling right now is because, you know, it's the inevitability of these tools at this point. I think more and more people are realizing that, you know, they're not going to go away. You can't just sweep them under the rug. They are going to impact things and they are going to integrate into processes and the tools that you're already using and everything. And so it's kind of becoming more and more a moment where people who, I guess I can compare it to the smartphone, or not even the smartphone, but cell phones. If you go back early enough, I was certainly one of the early people who, when cell phones were miniaturizing and coming out and everything, I resisted it. I was like, hell no, I'm not going to be available all the time. Like, I don't want to be available all the time. Yeah, it is kind of funny, actually, now that I say that out loud. But, you know, and I was not alone. There were a lot of other people like me at that time, like resisting, like, I'm not going to open myself up to that. That seems like a nightmare. And then eventually you kind of relent and you get on the other side of it. And I feel like there's a little bit of that going on with AI right now.
I also love the videos you've done of late on reminiscing about the Nexus.
Oh, yeah.
The Nexus One, right? That's what
the Nexus One.
Nexus One,
yeah.
Right? The little ball and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's really neat to go back and try to recreate what our attitudes were at the time.
Totally. Yes. I mean, it's been long enough, and there's been so much development in the industry. Yeah, the little Nexus One right
so
here.
Cute. I love that. I've got one somewhere.
Know.
I also have my beloved Trio. Oh, I miss my Trio.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a lot more videos like that that I'm working on just because I enjoy them. And it turns out people enjoy reminiscing about that stuff. So it's like, all right, cool. I can fuel that fire. Why not?
Yeah.
Fun. That's fun technology.
Yeah.
All right. We've reached the end. We've gone a little long, but it's been a blast. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Fun times. JeffJarvis.com. JeffJarvis.com. First and foremost, want people to know that they can go there to read your books, including Hot Type whenever it hits the stores. But before then, you've got the Web We Weave, the Gutenberg Parenthesis and Magazine, all of them available at JeffJarvis.com. Go there. You'll find Jeff's amazing work. AIinside.show is the page where you can find everything you need to know about this here show. So go there, subscribe, find show notes. Everything can be found there. It's all colorful and everything. And then finally, if you want to support us on a deeper level, you can become a patron, patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Go there, support us. We really appreciate it. We have some amazing executive producers like Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina, Dante St. James, Bono Day Rick, Jason Knifer, Jason Brady, and Anthony Downs. And supporting on a deeper level, they get a t-shirt. They get their name called out at the end of every single episode in deep appreciation. So thanks for doing what y'all do. And I think that's about it. We'll go ahead and round things out. We'll see you next time on another episode.
Thank you all.